When I say activate the I am, I'm not talking about a fancy mantra or an esoteric technique. I am calling on you to awaken the oldest, purest, and most ignored force that exists within the human being. The I am is the name of origin, the root of all creation, the point where your consciousness touches the limitless. Before any form, before any fact, before any circumstance, there is the I am, and everything you experience today is nothing more than a delayed reflection of what you, consciously or unconsciously, have declared through it. Humanity has forgotten who it is because people became addicted to looking outward. They observe their bank balance, their diagnosis, the opinions of others, repeated failures, and then conclude, this is who I am. But this is merely the surface, the shell, the shadow. None of this has a life of its own. All of this is a consequence. The cause lies in your inner state, and your inner state is born precisely from that, from the I am you choose to inhabit. You don't realize the greatness of this name because every time you utter it, you do so mechanically. I am tired. I am poor. I am unlucky. I am insecure. I am just like that. Without realizing it, you use the sacred name as a spell against yourself. Because the world doesn't question, doesn't interpret, and doesn't doubt. It simply obeys. The I am is the seed, and the world is the soil. The seed determines the harvest. You cannot plant fear and harvest liberation. You cannot plant limitation and harvest expansion. You cannot plant unworthiness and harvest miracles. The I am is the silent decree that organizes everything around you. Nothing resists it. Nothing can impose itself against it. Even Scripture records that this name is sufficient to bring down nations, part seas, revive hopes, and reverse destinies. But modern humanity has forgotten this. They walk through the world like spiritual orphans, begging for signs, waiting for permissions, asking for circumstances to change so they can finally change with them. They don't understand that it's not the visible that shapes the invisible. It's the invisible that sculpts the visible. It has always been this way. It will always be this way. And when you activate the I am, you stop reacting to the world and begin to govern. You stop fearing what you see and start affirming what you are. You stop depending on what happens and begin to command what should happen. The I am is the name that moves mountains and breaks chains because it is the only point where you and the creative source become one. When you declare I am, the entire universe silences to obey. And the world without resistance bows to the state you have assumed because everything is born there within you. The first principle is to understand, absolutely and irrevocably, that nothing changes out there until you change the state you maintain within. This is the stone the builders rejected, but it is precisely the cornerstone of all real transformation. Most people live like someone observing a mirror and trying to alter the image by touching the glass. They rub, push, pull, complain, beg, but the image remains the same because the mirror can only reflect what is before it. Life does exactly that. It reflects the state you assume as true, whether consciously or unconsciously. You think you are reacting to the world, but in truth, you are reacting to the projections of your own inner state. The world is not an author, it is a narrator. It merely tells the story you have silently written. When you understand this, everything in your life begins to gain clarity. You realize that it's not events that shape your state, but your state that attracts or repels certain events. If you assume the state of someone rejected, the world will show you rejections. If you assume the state of someone prosperous, previously invisible opportunities begin to emerge. If you assume the state of someone who deserves love, relationships begin to harmonize. But it is not magic. It is not coincidence. It is not external intervention. It is law. The material universe is merely the page where the text of your inner state is automatically written, and as long as you insist on trying to change the page without rewriting the text, you will live in frustration. A change of state doesn't happen when you repeat phrases mechanically, nor when you try to force emotions. It happens when you abandon the old I am and put on the new. And this means a silent, intimate, and profound exchange. It's when you decide that no matter what your eyes see, you internally assume a different identity. If the old state said, I am limited, you exchange it for, I am capable. If the old state said, I am defeated, you exchange it for, I am victorious. If the old state said, I am someone who struggles, you exchange it for, I am someone who has already won. It's not about convincing the world. It's about convincing yourself of what you now choose to be. Resistance arises because you, by habit, try to confirm your new state by looking at the visible world. But this is like planting a seed today and digging up the soil tomorrow to see if it has already sprouted. The state needs to be sustained without seeking external proof. The proof will emerge, but it will always be the final stage. The process begins within, always within. And when you truly change your state, you don't need to strive for the world to follow suit. It changes out of obligation. It changes out of obedience. Because the world has no will of its own in the face of a state assumed with conviction. You don't change the world, you change yourself, and the world, like a faithful shadow, follows your new form. Before we move on to the next point, let me tell you something that can greatly accelerate your transformation. There's a powerful, direct resource that has been changing many people's lives. It shows, in a practical and structured way, how to use visualization and the law of attraction to shift from waiting mode to manifesting mode. You will learn to align your thoughts, emotions, and actions to attract exactly what you desire. Whether it's more financial freedom, healthy relationships, or a life with more purpose and ease. It's not loose theory or empty motivational talk. It's real application with real results. If you feel it's time to stop just dreaming and finally start living what you deserve, this could be your next step. The link is in the pinned comment. Click it, explore, and see what has already begun to happen in the lives of those who decided to truly commit. Now then, let's move on to the next point. The second principle requires you to completely abandon the tyranny of appearances. Appearances are the great idol that modern humanity worships without realizing it. They bow before facts, kneel before numbers, tremble before opinions, and then conclude that reality is immutable because this is what is happening. But what is happening is not a final decree. It is merely a portrait of the state you have been maintaining until now. Appearances are late, delayed, outdated. They are like an old photograph that you insist on treating as a current mirror. And every time you react to what you see, you reaffirm what you see. When you fear the fact, you feed it. When you argue with it, you strengthen it. When you try to fight it, you confirm its existence as something powerful. Appearances gain life only because you give them attention and authority. The spiritual truth is simple, but it requires courage. Appearances have no power of their own. They are shadows produced by the light of your consciousness, and the shadow has no voice, no strength, no substance. It merely follows the form of the object that projects it. That object is the state you inhabit. The error is trying to manipulate the shadow while maintaining the same inner state that produces it. The shadow will remain the same because the source remains the same. Therefore, when the world presents you with something that contradicts what you desire, do not be shaken. Do not retreat. Do not treat the visible as sovereign. Appearances are merely delayed messengers of an old state you have already decided to abandon. To abandon appearances, you must learn not to be impressed by what you see. This does not mean ignoring reality, but putting it in its proper place. It is an effect, not a cause. When you look at an empty bank account and say, "This is temporary," when you look at a diagnosis and say, "This does not define me," when you look at a difficult situation and say, "This is dissolving," you are not fleeing reality, you are commanding it. You are affirming that the external world does not dictate who you are, but merely reflects the identity you choose to assume. And if the identity has changed, sooner or later the reflection will also have to change. The secret lies in not granting appearances the authority they do not possess. They scream because they are dying. They stir because they have lost their throne. When you assume a new state and remain firm, the old world tries to intimidate you, like an echo that takes a few seconds to fade away. But the echo is not the voice. It is merely the residue. If you do not yield to it, it ceases. And when it ceases, the new emerges. Not because the world decided to be generous, but because you finally stopped worshipping it and started governing it. The third principle is to dwell in the end, and this is the discipline that separates those who understand the law from those who merely study it. Dwelling in the end means living internally as someone who has already arrived where they desire to be, even before any external evidence confirms it. This is the great secret of prophets, mystics, visionaries, and all who throughout history seem to achieve the impossible. They didn't wait for the world to change to then feel. They felt first, and the world changed because it had no choice. Dwelling in the end is accepting that the cause of your reality lies in the state you maintain, not in the journey you undertake, and that is why the path doesn't matter. The end matters. The end is everything. The common mind insists on trying to control the details. It wants to know when, how, in what way, through whom, by what path. This obsession with the means is precisely what prevents manifestation, because it keeps the person trapped in the state of someone who doesn't yet have, hasn't yet arrived. When you imagine the steps, you reinforce the lack. When you imagine the process, you reinforce the distance. But when you imagine the end, and only the end, you immediately place yourself in the position of someone who already possesses. And the state of possession is the true cause of all achievement. Dwelling in the end is not fantasy. It is active faith. It is the ability to feel now what the world will only show later. It is wearing the result like an inner garment, knowing that the world will have to adjust it to your body. If you desire healing, do not visualize treatments, interventions, doctors. Visualize yourself healthy, strong, living as someone who has already gone through the process. If you desire prosperity, do not imagine how you will acquire money. Imagine the life you lead when you already have it. If you desire reconciliation, do not imagine conversations and strategies. Imagine the feeling of peace that exists when everything is resolved. The end contains the path, but the path does not contain the end. The beauty of this principle is that when you dwell in the end with sincerity, the need to control disappears. You begin to act naturally, instinctively, guided by inner impulses that seem small but which together form a perfect bridge to the result. This bridge doesn't come from you, it comes from the assumed state. You don't need to plan miracles, just allow them to unfold. All you need to do is sustain the feeling that the end is already real. And this is where many give up, because they seek early confirmations. But the end doesn't need proof to exist within you. It is the seed. And every seed, when protected, inevitably breaks through the earth. Dwelling in the end is protecting this seed with the silent conviction of one who already knows they have won, because within, you have already won, and the world, sooner or later, will have to agree. The fourth principle is the courage to contradict common logic, and this is a point where many stumble because they confuse logic with truth. Human logic is limited, narrow, built from past experiences, fears, and inherited beliefs. It says that you can only believe after seeing, that you can only feel different after something changes, that you can only assume a new state when there is sufficient proof to justify it. Logic wants security before taking the step, but spiritual law works in the opposite way. You take the step first and security appears afterward. Logic wants evidence. Creative consciousness demands conviction. Logic says, it's not possible. The I am says, it is already done. Contradicting logic is not acting irresponsibly. It is acting from another level of consciousness. It is realizing that everything you have experienced until now was created by following this exact law, even when you didn't know about it. When you assumed the state of someone who failed, logic found 1,000 explanations to justify the failure. When you assumed the state of someone unworthy, logic found stories to prove to you that you truly didn't deserve it. Logic always adapts to the state you assume. It is not cause ought, it is consequence. Therefore, to trust it is to trust a servant as if it were a master. And every time you allow logic to dictate your inner state, you imprison yourself in the old world. Inner courage arises when you realize you no longer need that validation, that you no longer need to wait for circumstances to change to finally change yourself. You abandon the need for explanation and assume the need for position. Contradicting logic is responding to the world not with what it shows, but with what you choose to be. When everything indicates there is no way out, you choose the state of one who has already left. When everything points to defeat, you choose the state of one who has already won. When everything seems stagnant, you choose the state of one who has already moved forward. Logic will scream, protest, try to pull you back to the old pattern. It will say you are being naive, deluded, rash. But it says this because it feeds on the past, and you are moving from the future you have already assumed. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to justify your new state. You don't need to explain what you are doing. Coherence does not exist between your state and the current world. It exists between your state and the world that is coming. When you contradict human logic, you align yourself with divine logic, which always operates from the inside out. You speak, act, think, and feel as someone who already is, and the world adjusts because it has no alternative in the face of a firm consciousness. And when it adjusts, the same people who doubted will say it was luck, coincidence, a miracle. They will not understand that none of this was chance. It was simply obedience. Because external logic always bows to internal certainty. Always. The fifth principle is what definitively separates the awakened creator from the spiritual beggar: assuming and sustaining. Many even understand the law, even practice visualizations, even change their state for a few minutes, but then return to the old identity the moment the world doesn't immediately confirm what they imagined. They treat the state as a fragile desire, not as a solid position. But the state is not a fleeting fantasy. It is a dwelling. And no one who moves house expects the old address to continue defining who they are. When you assume a new state, you change your inner address. And the world, life's postman, can only deliver results compatible with this new address if you remain in it long enough for the mail to arrive. Sustaining the state is the part that demands spiritual maturity. It is here that you confront your automatic reactions, your old fears, your memories, your negative expectations. It is here that the old identity tries to pull you back, reminding you of everything you have lived through, everything that went wrong, everything that hurt you. It tries to negotiate your surrender, saying it is safer to believe in the visible than in the invisible. But you cannot sustain two states at the same time. Either you inhabit the old or you inhabit the new, and the world will faithfully reflect what you sustain in silence. Assuming and sustaining means that when the old world still appears, because it always appears for a time, you do not treat it as truth. You see it as residue, as a delayed shadow, as an echo of who you no longer are. Understand, when you change internally, the old world does not disappear instantly. It gradually dissolves like a set being dismantled after a play ends. The same situations may arise, but you will respond to them from a different place. The response reveals the state. If you respond as someone who has already won, the old world loses strength. If you respond as someone who is still struggling, you reinforce it. Sustaining the state is acting in accordance with what you have chosen to be, even when everything still seems the same. And here is the most important secret. It is not the intensity of feeling, nor the perfection of visualization, nor the repetition of affirmations that creates change. It is silent perseverance. It is the unwavering commitment not to return to the old state, regardless of what your eyes see or what your emotions try to convince you of. When you sustain the new state with firmness, it becomes your identity. And when it becomes identity, the world cannot resist. It must obey. Because the world does not create the state creates the world. And the one who sustains their state with conviction becomes unshakable, irresistible, and inevitable. Your victory is no longer a possibility. It is a command. When you bring all the principles together, abandoning appearances, dwelling in the end, contradicting human logic, sustaining the state, and assuming the I am, something begins to change in the deepest part of you. It is not a noisy, dramatic change. It is silent, firm, inevitable. You begin to realize that it was never the world holding you back. It was the state you chose to cling to. When this dawns on you as truth, you no longer need to fight with life. You direct it. You don't ask for doors to open. You walk through them. You don't look for signs. You become the sign. The I am, when assumed with conviction, dissolves old chains like wet paper. Fear loses its power. Doubt loses its voice, and what once seemed impossible begins to move toward you as if it had always been yours. Because it always was. You just weren't occupying the state of one who could receive. Listen carefully. Nothing you desire is beyond your reach. Nothing. The distance between you and any reality is merely the depth of your assumption. When you assume that you already are, the universe doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't analyze. It obeys. It bows to the state you uphold as truth. The world has no freedom in the face of an awakened consciousness. Matter is slow, but it follows. Life is slow, but it follows. Time is slow, but it follows. And they all follow you. The I am is the name that brings everything to its knees, not because you fight, but because you affirm. The Creator does not debate with creation. He says, "Let there be," within himself, and the world responds, "So be it." Therefore, from now on, stop begging for external changes. Stop asking for life to improve. Stop waiting for favorable circumstances. This is the stance of someone who has forgotten who they are. Instead, assume the state, assume the name, assume the end. Command in silence and conviction that your reality reflect what you have chosen to be. Say within yourself, "I am what I seek, I am what I desire, I am that which already exists within me." And then act, think, react, and live as someone who is already in the result. You don't need to announce it to the world, just sustain it within. The world will hear, the world will come, the world will bow. And if you wish to deepen this force, strengthen this consciousness, and walk with greater clarity toward the state that transforms everything, in the pinned comment there is a resource that amplifies precisely this power. Use it as an extension of your practice, a firm step in the direction of what you have already decided to be. Close your eyes and let the silence envelop you for an instant. Listen with your heart to the subtle beats that come from the invisible. Watch before they take this down. These words seem like just a warning, but they carry something deeper, a whisper of destiny, a soft touch of something trying to awaken you. Because what is about to be said does not belong to trends, religions, or doctrines. It belongs to your own essence. It is what the world tried to make you forget. You are the creator of your reality. We live surrounded by noise, opinions, fears, comparisons, distractions, all trying to mold what you believe yourself to be. Since childhood, you were told what you could and couldn't do, what was possible and what wasn't. And little by little, you came to believe it. You put on identities that were never yours, assuming limitations that didn't stem from your spirit, but from the repetition of external voices. This is how humanity falls asleep, believing more in what it sees than in what it feels. But there is a moment, an instant of clarity, when the soul cries out to remember. And perhaps that moment is now. Because when everything around you seems to be falling apart, that is precisely when the truth whispers, "Nothing out there is against you. Everything out there is mirroring you." Failure, rejection, scarcity, these are merely reflections of the stories you have agreed to tell yourself. But if you are capable of creating this, you are also capable of undoing it. The universe is neutral. It doesn't punish you, nor does it reward you. It simply responds. Every thought you hold with emotion is a silent command. Every image you nurture in your heart is a seed planted in the field of existence. And when you understand this, you stop being a victim of circumstances and begin to be the author of your experience. That's why I say, the world tries to silence what awakens you, because a person conscious of their own power cannot be manipulated. A person who understands that everything originates in imagination does not fear scarcity, does not beg for love, does not wait for approval. They create, they assume, they become. So before the noise of routine distracts you again, listen with your soul. What you're about to hear is more than a discourse. It is a mirror placed before your true self. It's not about learning something new, but about remembering who you always were. And when that memory touches your heart, everything will change. Because when a person awakens, the universe bows, and the impossible becomes inevitable. The first principle begins with a simple truth that few dare to face. Everything that happens in your life is the exact reflection of what you are sustaining within yourself. There is no luck, no chance, no destiny that punishes or saves you. There are only states of consciousness you have chosen to inhabit, some out of fear, others out of habit, others because you were never taught you could choose differently. You do not live what you desire, you live what you believe yourself to be, and the world, faithful as a mirror, merely repeats what you affirm with your feeling. Think of how many times you desired something with all your might, and yet nothing happened. Your mind said, "I want," but your heart whispered, "It's not for me." And it is always the heart that wins, because the universe responds to the vibration of your state, not to the words you utter. That is why anxious prayers are not answered, not because God is deaf, but because he operates in the language of conviction, not of fear. One who feels lacking, even if speaking of abundance, is affirming absence. One who feels rejected, even while asking for love, is affirming loneliness. And so, the world merely confirms the story that a person insists on telling about themselves. But the good news is that none of this is fixed. You can change your state right now, this very instant. The human mind has the gift of recreating itself with every thought, of redesigning itself with every image it holds. You don't need to fight against what exists, simply assume what you want it to be. When in silence you say, "I am prosperous," and you feel this as a truth, the universe begins to reorganize itself. Unexpected situations arise, people appear, paths open up. It's not magic, it's law. Reality must obey the image that your being maintains with faith. Therefore, the first step is to abandon the old habit of identifying with what hurts. Stop saying, "I am unhappy," "I am unlucky." That's just how I am. Each of these phrases is another brick in the wall that separates you from your own power. Learn to speak to yourself as one who molds destiny. Observe what you feel, and if something causes you discomfort, change your state. Pretend, if necessary, until the new feeling becomes natural. Creation always begins with an inner choice. And when you choose a new state and remain faithful to it, something invisible moves in your favor. The world bends, time folds, and everything that seemed distant begins to draw near. Because you are not the effect, you are the cause. And when the cause changes, the effect has no choice but to change as well. The second principle is to understand that imagination is the true creative power. Everything that exists began as an idea, an invisible image held in the silence of the mind. Nothing that is visible today was born externally. Everything emerged from the invisible, from the realm where you think and feel. When you understand this, you stop looking for signs and start generating causes. Because imagination is not a game of the mind, it is the womb of reality. Every scene you reproduce in your mind with emotion and faith is a seed planted in the soil of existence, and sooner or later, it will sprout in the physical world. Most people imagine unconsciously. They repeat images of fear, failure, and scarcity, and then are surprised when all of it materializes. But one who awakens uses imagination like a divine artist. They see what they desire, feel as if it is already real, and refuse to doubt, even if the world says otherwise. And that's where the miracle happens. Because the universe does not distinguish between what is physical and what is deeply felt. It simply responds to what vibrates within you with consistency. Think of something simple, a memory that makes you smile. The instant you relive that scene, your body reacts. Your heart warms, your face softens, your breathing changes. This proves that imagination isn't merely mental. It is real. It acts within you now. So, if a memory can change your body, what can a vision sustained with faith not do? When you imagine your desire as already fulfilled, you are shaping the invisible field that will sooner or later become matter. But there is a rule. Don't imagine to see if it works. Imagine because it already is. Doubt is like rust that corrodes creative power. Faith, on the other hand, is the fire that solidifies the image in the invisible. One who imagines without haste, with the calmness of one who knows, creates entire realities. They don't need to tell anyone, nor seek proof. They trust, and for that reason the universe conspires in their favor. So practice. Before sleeping, close your eyes and relive the final scene. See yourself living what you desire. Feel the touch, the sound, the presence. And don't just think, feel. Because feeling is the language of the Creator. An image without emotion is a shadow, but when feeling enters, creation comes to life. Everything begins within. And when you change what you imagine, you change what the world can offer you. Because the world is nothing more than the mirror of your imagination made visible. The third principle reveals the silent force that separates those who merely dream from those who truly create. Don't react, recreate. Most people believe they need to fight against what they see, resist circumstances, correct the world. But the wise person knows that every reaction only feeds the reality they want to change. What you resist persists. Because when you react, you are confirming the power of what bothers you. But when you turn inward and choose a new state, the old begins to lose its power. And reality obediently begins to reorganize itself. When a difficult situation arises, the first human tendency is to complain, blame, justify. You do this because you were trained to believe that the world is the cause and you are the effect. But the opposite is true. You are the cause, and the world is the effect. Each time you react with anger, fear, or despair, you are renewing the energy of that situation. And that's why it seems like it never changes. The secret is not to give emotion to what you don't want to perpetuate. Learn to observe without attachment, to feel without drowning, to choose anew without explaining yourself. True mastery begins when you learn to remain calm in the face of chaos. When you look at something that once hurt you and think, "This too shall pass, because I have already changed within." It is at that instant that the old begins to die. The problem loses the fuel of your attention, and the new state begins to manifest. It is like the dawn expelling the night. There is no struggle, only replacement. When you react, you create noise. When you recreate, you emanate command. And the universe always responds to command, never to despair. If something challenges you, return to silence, close your eyes, and affirm within yourself, "This does not define me. I am greater than this." Repeat until you feel it. Because feeling is the signal the universe recognizes. When your feeling changes, reality must obey. It's not about ignoring the world, but about understanding it as a temporary reflection. Each time you choose to react less and imagine more, you create space for the invisible to act. The power is not in resisting what happens, but in remaining faithful to the state you wish to see. Life will always try to test you, but each test is merely an opportunity to reaffirm who you are. So, the next time something provokes you, remember, you are not being attacked. You are being called to create anew. Close your eyes, silence the fear, and reclaim your power. Because one who stops reacting and starts recreating discovers the secret that moves the heavens. The world obeys not the strongest, but the most conscious. The fourth principle is the most beautiful and the most transformative. Give thanks before you see. Gratitude is the seal of the conscious creator, the silent gesture that tells the universe, "I already have." There is no greater power than this. Because when you give thanks even without proof, you are affirming the existence of what is not yet visible. And the world, faithful to your state, begins to align itself to confirm what you have chosen to feel. Many confuse gratitude with a simple gesture of courtesy, but it is much more than that. Gratitude is faith in the form of emotion. It is the living conviction that the invisible has already moved in your favor. It is the recognition that there is no lack, no waiting, no chance, only the perfect reflection of what has already been accepted inwardly. When you truly give thanks, you are telling the universe, "I trust." And the universe, sensitive to trust, responds with abundance. Imagine the moment you deeply desire something. The anxious mind thinks, "When this arrives, I will be happy." But awakened consciousness says, "I am already happy, and that is why this comes." Gratitude anticipates the end. It transforms desire into possession, hope into certainty. And when this vibration becomes constant, reality bends before it. Coincidences increase, doors open, the right people appear. None of this is a miracle. It is the natural response of the world to your new state. One who lives in gratitude does not need signs. They walk in peace because they know that everything is being provided. They understand that every delay is just an adjustment, and every silence is a preparation. While the common person doubts and despairs, the grateful person remains firm, smiling amidst the invisible. They do not yet see the fruit, but already smell the aroma of the harvest. Gratitude is not an exercise, it is a dwelling place. It is the state of being that has already understood that nothing is missing. It is the gaze that sees blessings where others only perceive absence. It is the secret language of those who master the law of assumption, because one who already gives thanks already possesses. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't think about what you don't have yet. Give thanks as if it were already yours. Walk with the lightness of one who has already received. And if the world still shows no proof, smile, because it has no choice but to bow to your certainty. Give thanks until you feel it. And when you feel it, you will know that the invisible has already moved, because the universe is like a perfect mirror. It reflects only what is sustained with love and conviction. And when your gratitude becomes your dwelling place, your entire life begins to serve you in silence, like a faithful servant before their king. The fifth principle is the quietest and the most definitive. Decide. It seems simple, but this is where most fail. Because truly deciding is not desiring, nor hoping, nor trying. It is to close off all other possibilities within you. It is to tell the universe with authority, this is what it is, and not to turn back. True decision is a spiritual force. When you decide, the air changes, time folds, probabilities reorganize. The invisible hastens to obey, because it recognizes in you the sound of certainty. Many live asking, praying, insisting, but never truly decide. They pray as one who negotiates, desire as one who fears, affirm as one who doubts. They say, I want, but the next instant they think, what if it doesn't work out? This what if is what kills miracles. Because the universe does not respond to desire, it responds to conviction. And conviction is born of decision. When you say it is done without wavering, without looking back, reality begins to bend to your command. To decide is to sever the link with fear. It is the moment when the mind quiets and the spirit takes the helm. It is when you stop asking for permission to be who you are and simply assume your place. Indecisive people are like boats adrift. They are carried by the winds of circumstances. But one who decides is like a lighthouse, firm, unshakable, immune to storms. They do not wait for signs to believe. They believe, and for that reason, the signs appear. To decide is the most sacred act of the Creator, because when a person decides, they stop being an effect and return to being a cause. They stop asking when and start affirming now. This change in posture changes everything. People you never imagined begin to appear, opportunities reveal themselves, doors that once seemed locked open smoothly. It is not coincidence, it is reality's obedience to your new vibration. And there is a secret. Decision does not require effort, but rest. When you decide, you rest, because there is no longer struggle, no longer doubt. There is only the silent certainty of one who already possesses. And this state is magnetic. It attracts what is yours without haste and without fail. Therefore, from now on, decide to be. Decide to possess. Decide to live what your heart has already shown you. Don't wait for courage. Courage comes after the decision. Don't wait for the path. The path appears when you decide to walk. The entire universe awaits your yes. Not a timid yes, but an absolute yes, one that ends all doubts. Because when a person decides with their heart, the impossible bows, the invisible conspires, and the world, in silence, begins to reorganize itself to confirm your word. Now that you have heard, understand, nothing and no one controls you. You are the only power that exists in your experience. Everything you see, every face, every challenge, every blessing, everything was born from you, passed through you, and will return to you. Life is not an enemy to be conquered. It is a mirror that serves you. When you change within, it changes outside. When you forgive, it dissolves into peace. When you decide, it obeys. The world tries to convince you that you are small, limited, dependent on luck or destiny. But this is a necessary illusion until the moment you awaken. And that moment has arrived. Because if you are hearing these words, it is because your soul has already asked for this awakening. It is tired of waiting, of begging, of doubting. Now it wants to remember that it was always a creator, that it always had the power, and that reality was never something out of control, merely a reflection of what you chose to feel. So, from this moment on, stop asking the world to change. Command it, not with arrogance, but with silent authority. Close your eyes and affirm, I am. And everything that needs to exist will come to you. Don't expect others to understand you, don't explain, don't prove. The Creator does not justify their creation. They merely contemplate and say, it is good. What you once called a miracle is merely the natural unfolding from a new consciousness. What once seemed impossible to you is just the old state collapsing to make way for the new. And when fear comes, because it will come, smile. It is merely the echo of the past, trying to survive in a heart that has already awakened. You are the author, not the character. You are the breath that moves forms, the verb that creates days. The world bows to your feeling, therefore speak less, imagine more, react less, trust more, doubt less, give thanks more. And when everything seems to quiet down, remember, silence is the sound of creation in progress. From today, walk with this certainty. What you desire already exists. What you ask for has already been heard. What you expect is already coming. And all that remains for you is to assume, to feel, and to remain. Because when a person discovers who they truly are, the entire universe becomes their extension. And in that instant, the impossible ceases to be a word and becomes your natural way of living. Stop. Before looking for signs, make a simple adjustment. Switch places with the author of your story. You have been living as a character, reacting to what the world says. Today, sit in the director's chair. The scene around you is not a courtroom, it's a film set. The camera records what your state commands, nothing more than that. If you understand this now, anxiety loses its job, fear resigns, and the past stops being your resume. What's visible always arrives late. What arrives first is the intimate decree, made without applause, without an audience, without justifications. Don't seek promises, assume a position. The law doesn't negotiate with fragile assumptions. It obeys established convictions. Convince yourself of the following. Life doesn't dialogue with what you ask for. It replicates what you are in secret. The self you wear inside is the mold of matter. Now try a silent gesture. Release your body, recede from the need to prove, and slide into the sober sensation of already possessing what you desire. Don't imagine like someone begging. Remember like someone returning home. When the state ignites, everything in the body changes tone. Breathing slows, the mind stops measuring distance, the heart recognizes familiar territory. You don't need to force grand images. You need to sustain a simple certainty. That's where the single word carries the weight of a royal seal. It doesn't create the blessing, it closes the vault. It doesn't convince the universe, it informs that the matter is concluded. And that's why it shouldn't be displayed, opined on, debated. Secret here isn't superstition, it's governance. The seed doesn't explain itself while sprouting. You don't account for the invisible to others' curiosity. You command in silence and let the world slowly catch up to what is already consummated within you. Enter the state as one crosses an internal border and, when the sensation of possession is alive, conclude. Afterward, walk lightly. Do what someone who has already received would do. Small acts, zero theatricality. The 3D world is stubborn, but it is obedient. Sooner or later, it bends. And when someone asks, "What did you do?" you will know. It was done in the only place where everything begins and ends, within. My first advice is simple and relentless. Assume before you see. The world doesn't pay in advance. It settles after you close the internal contract, and this contract is called state. Begin by sighing deeply, letting your body fall into a lucid serenity, like someone dropping the weapon of control. Close your eyes and ask for nothing. Recall. Recall the after as now. The touch of what you desire is not a distant fantasy. It is a memory brought from the future to the present. Mentally touch the object as one recognizes an old friend. Feel the texture, the weight, the temperature. Hear the ambient sound of a life already resolved. Confident steps, opening doors, conversations that already address you by your new name. Allow your breath to find the rhythm of someone who has arrived. You are not creating with effort. You are donning an identity that already belongs to you. Imagination isn't theater, it's a registry office. The act of assuming registers the fact in the invisible, and the invisible is always the matrix of the visible. If the mind insists on asking when, respond with composure. That is irrelevant for someone who has already arrived. The clock on the outside works for those who have settled within. Don't try to push the scene, sustain it. Sustaining is the muscle of faith. Let a small detail anchor the feeling. The message read on the phone, The key turning the smell of the place, the light coming through the window of the new place, the approved email. The murmur of gratitude born effortlessly. Return to this detail several times a day, not to implore but to remember. Remembering is signing again. With each felt remembrance, the old state loses blood. The new state, nourished, begins to command behavior. You will speak less of problems, choose sober words, make those small gestures that align with someone who already possesses. This is not pretense, it is coherence. Avoid the common mistake of measuring progress by external signs. A sign doesn't create a state creates a sign. If the world offers you a contradiction, receive it as a delayed echo of an identity you have already abandoned. Don't get irritated by the slowness of the 3D world. Respect its slow pace. True change doesn't need an announcement, it needs continuity. Therefore, before sleeping, return to the short scene that proves the achievement. 2 or 3 images are enough. Sleep within them like someone closing a book already read. Sleep is the gatekeeper of the subconscious. Give it the correct script. And when the sensation is fully ignited, serene, familiar, inevitable, conclude the matter within with a silent decision. No promises, no "I hope so." Give thanks without words and rise like someone who has sealed a contract. The next day should find you coherent, choosing, responding, moving as one who already is. If you slip and wear the old self for a few minutes, don't dramatize, retreat, breathe, reassume. The trump card is not never falling, it is reassuming quickly. In a short time, you will notice that the old landscape no longer recognizes you, and the new one begins to bend. This is how the invisible governs, through sustained internal posture, not by applied external force. Assume before you see, and seeing will come as an obedient employee of what you have decided to be. My second advice is to seal the decree within with a single word that concludes the matter. Creation doesn't answer anxious requests, it responds to consummated decisions. When the sensation of possession is alive, not agitated euphoria, but the calm of one who recognizes familiar territory, pronounce in silence the word that closes the vault: done. It's not "it will happen," it's not "who knows," it's not "I hope so." It's done. This word isn't magic in itself, it's the signature of the state. Spoken outside the state, it's noise. Spoken from within, it's law. Therefore, don't repeat it in despair. Don't display it aloud to convince anyone. Once spoken with conviction, be silent. Silence is the frame of authority. Understand the mechanism. While you analyze, you delay. While you conclude, you release. The mind that begs for guarantees creates delays. The mind that decrees clears the way. Done is the period that replaces question marks. After the contract is signed, you don't rewrite clauses every day. You fulfill your part and let the other side fulfill theirs. It works the same here. You've sealed it, so live coherently. Don't reopen the process out of curiosity or fear. Curiosity asks, will it be? Fear whispers, what if it's not? Both ask the world for proof as if the world were the cause. Remember, the world is the effect. If doubt arises, don't argue with it. Return for a few moments to the feeling of the assumed state and rest. Rest is faith in action. Protect the decree from chatter. Explaining it to those who don't inhabit your state is inviting opinion to interfere in what is not their concern. Secret here isn't superstition, it's spiritual hygiene. The seed sprouts in the dark. You don't unearth it every day to see if it's working. Let the spoken word do its work underground. Go about your day with simple gestures, consistent with someone who has already received. Organize documents, study what a self in that position would know. Treat people from the dignity that this state naturally evokes. No theatricality. True creation makes no noise, it dictates direction. There will be moments when the old scenery tries to poke you with small tests, a delayed email, a skeptical comment, a bill that arrives. Observe without trembling. This is just the tale of the old identity's comet passing by. You don't need to respond with nervousness, respond with governance. An internal "it is consummated" is enough to prevent you from dropping emotionally. If useful, anchor yourself in a small ritual of coherence. Breathe 3 times slowly, roll your shoulders, look at your surroundings as someone who already belongs, and proceed. The body reads commands from the state. Help it with posture. Remember that done is not a spell to manipulate the outside, it is a verdict that crystallizes the inside. What comes next is just the 3D world catching up to the decree. If at any moment you feel you slipped and reopened the case with complaints, don't blame yourself. Close it again. Return to the state, replace the seal, and continue. Mastery is not in never doubting, but in concluding quickly. An entire life changes when you learn to finish matters within. When it is done, it's over. The kingdom understands the order, and matter, slow yet obedient, begins to align. My third advice is to guard your emotion, not the calendar. External time is a slow messenger. What dictates the speed of events is the quality of the state you sustain within. Many fail not because they chose their desire poorly, but because they monitor deadlines like inspectors and abandon the emotional climate that would make the desire flourish. You don't manage dates, you govern internal atmospheres. If your emotion is of someone who has already received, the minutes cooperate. If your emotion is of someone who fears losing, the days drag on. Stop watching the clock and start watching the tone of your being. How is this done in practice? First, establish a return point, a simple, concrete detail that reactivates the sensation of possession, the vibration of your phone with an approved message, the click of a key, the smell of a new environment, the embrace of someone celebrating with you. When you notice anxiety, bring the detail back, breathe slowly, and let your body adopt the posture of one who has arrived. Relaxed shoulders, calm gaze, economical movements. The body is the fastest servant of the state. If you position it, the mind receives the message. Next, conduct your small daily acts from this atmosphere. Someone who has already received organizes papers without drama, responds to messages with sobriety, chooses words without begging for validation. It's not staging, it's intimate coherence. If hours pass and nothing happens, remember, what happens is always an invisible changing of the guard before it becomes a scene. The old mind will try to negotiate with you. 3 days left, nothing has changed. Respond internally. The external deadline is irrelevant for someone who is already there. Return to the return point, replace the correct emotion, and continue. The correct state is silent. It doesn't need fireworks to feel certainty. True faith isn't noisy, it's stable. Stability is the music that life hears. Avoid the traps of compulsive monitoring. Checking email every 5 minutes, recalculating figures in circles, opening conversations to see if it will happen. All this communicates to the subconscious that you still doubt. Exchange the addiction of measuring for the habit of remaining. Remain in the tone. If necessary, establish ritual pauses throughout the day. 3 deep breaths, eyes closed for 10 seconds, a return to the anchor detail, and a brief phrase that seals the mood. It is consummated. Don't prolong it. Go out and live. The garden doesn't grow faster because you observe it. It grows because you water it and leave it in peace. When a test arises, a delay, a no, a comment of scorn, understand it as an old echo, not a new decree. The 3D world has inertia. Your task is not to fight with echoes, but to maintain the tone that cancels the reverberation. Say inwardly, "You arrived late," and proceed doing what someone who already belongs to the desired reality would do. With each repetition of this posture, your nervous system learns a new normal. And when the body learns, the world learns. If you slip, don't dramatize. The grace of mastery lies in the swiftness of return, not in the fantasy of perfection. Return to the anchor point, restore the mood, and continue. Sooner or later, and usually sooner than you suppose when you stop watching the clock, the facts arrive like punctual employees of a king who has already given the order. Guard your emotion. The calendar is merely the employee. The king is your state. My fourth advice is to fast from appearances. What you call reality are delayed reports from the state you no longer inhabit. Reports, notifications, glances, and numbers smell of yesterday. They are echoes of the old self. If you consume these appearances as food, your faith will starve. Fasting from appearances is not denying bills, commitments, or facts. It is denying them the right to define your state. You pay what you need to pay, respond to what you need to respond to, but you don't grant them a commanding voice. The command is yours. Choose and the source of the command is the invisible. Examine your day like someone filtering the soul's diet. What enters through your eyes and ears? Does it feed or weaken the state? Reduce exposure to the despair embedded in headlines, predictions, and comparisons. Bad news is propaganda for the old self. You are not obligated to watch this campaign. When a no arises, don't waste energy defending against it. Retreat for an instant and respond with governance. You arrived late. Afterward, return to the anchor detail of possession and allow your body to adopt the posture of the new self. The body is a faithful servant. Straighten your shoulders, relax your jaw, make your movements economical. One who already belongs doesn't beg, they occupy. From this internal occupation, execute the next obvious simple step that maintains coherence with your decision. The 3D world measures your conviction by its continuity, not by its volume. Continue. There is a practice that seals this fast: nightly review. Before sleeping, close your eyes and rewrite the day as it should have been for a self who already possesses what they desire. It's not childish fantasy, it's education of the subconscious. Replace the tense conversation with a sober one. Exchange the hasty response for a response from one who reigns. See the message that didn't come as having arrived. Feel the meeting that didn't occur as having concluded gracefully. 2 or 3 scenes are enough. Sleep is the bridge through which the decree passes without resistance. You deliver the new version to the mind's gatekeeper, and he, diligently, forwards it to the floor below, where the law takes hold. Also, practice selective attention during the day. It's not about closing your eyes to the world, but about directing them. What you look at grows. If you need to read a difficult report, read it, but don't chew on the fear that usually comes with it. Read as one who governs, not as one who defends. Faced with a line, a slow system, a delay, protect your state with inner silence. The old self tries to comment, to prove, to complain, and each comment is a donation of authority to what no longer has the right to govern. Economize external words to conserve internal power. When someone ironizes your path, smile politely and don't evangelize your decree. Secret here is spiritual hygiene. The seed doesn't sprout when you expose it to the raw sun of curiosity. Maturity knows when to be silent. You owe no explanations for what was decided in the sanctuary of your heart. Walk, do your part, maintain the tone. Fasting from appearances is ceasing to feed what you no longer are. In a short time, like someone changing seasons without warning, you will realize that the news from outside has begun to speak the language of the self you sustain within. It's always like this. Matter is slow, but obedient. You don't fight with shadows, you change the bulb. My 5th advice is to practice fruitful silence. There is a type of silence that is escape and cowardice. This is not it. Fruitful silence is governance. It's when you decide that what has been decreed within will not be exposed to the market of opinions. Each time you explain too much, you dilute the anointing of the decree. The seed needs darkness and depth to germinate. The same applies to your creations. Speak less, preserve more, not out of fear of envy or bad luck, but out of respect for the mechanics of the invisible. What is being born within you doesn't need applause, it needs nourishment. And the nourishment of the invisible is confident stillness. Practice 3 forms of silence. First, the silence of the tongue. Avoid chatter about desires, plans, goals, especially with those who do not inhabit your state. The world loves to measure what it doesn't conceive, and, without realizing it, you open the door to borrowed doubts. Say less, say late, or don't say at all. Let the evidence speak for you when it's time. Second, the silence of the mind. When your head starts to light up with what-if spotlights, don't debate with the thoughts. Empty them with presence. Bring your body to the now. Long breath, relaxed shoulders, gentle gaze. Slide back into the sensation of already possessing. The noisy mind falls silent when it realizes the throne is occupied. Third, the silence of the heart. Don't feed internal conversations of complaint, comparison, or self-pity. They are thieves of authority. If an old wound wants to speak, bless it and return it to the past. A heart at peace is the greenhouse where the new flourishes. Fruitful silence is not inertia. It is controlled power. You work, study, respond, act, but you don't display the backstage. One who reigns doesn't need to prove they reign. They merely sign and proceed. And that is why the single word, when spoken in the correct state, demands silence afterward. Done. And silence. Not because speaking breaks the magic, but because speaking shifts the focus. You leave the sanctuary and go to the public square. In the square, doubt sells pamphlets. In the sanctuary, certainty writes laws. Choose the enclosure. Each day, find minutes for a brief retreat. Turn off noises, close your eyes, restore the anchor scene, feel the possession, and listen to the internal sound of one who has already arrived. This sound has no words, but it shapes matter. If someone pressures for explanations, smile politely and respond, "In due time, you will know." It's not arrogance, it's spiritual hygiene. Some things are lost when they become conversation. Protect what you love while it is vulnerable. When it matures, no one can deny the fruit. And even when the fruits appear, maintain sobriety. Celebrate within, give thanks intimately, and continue. Silence is not absence of voice, it is presence of governance. It is what prevents you from negotiating your decree for emotional payoff, approval, curiosity, validation. If you slip and talk too much, don't condemn yourself. Retreat, close the internal windows, reassume the state, and replace the seal. Learn from the excess and return to precision. Mastery is continuous adjustment. In a short time, you will notice that your energy is not wasted on justifications. You walk lightly, speak little, decide clearly. And the world, slow yet obedient, begins to reflect this new economy of power. Fruitful silence is the royal guard of your inner castle. With it, what you decided in secret flourishes in public, without noise, but with authority. So rise within. You have seen the map. Assume before you see, seal with a single word, guard your emotion and not the calendar, fast from appearances, and protect everything with fruitful silence. Now, turn this into a habit. Life doesn't reward the curious, it rewards governors. Enter the state as one who crosses an intimate border and does not return. When the sensation of possession is ignited, conclude, done. Afterward, walk with the sobriety of someone who has already received. You don't need to announce anything. You need to inhabit what you decided to be. Stop asking the world to change for you. The world is the mirror, not the sculptor. Don't beg for signs. Don't negotiate with shadows. Don't explain your decrees to those who live outside your sanctuary. Your task is one: to command in silence and certainty that reality align with the state you have chosen. If the old scenery appears with its echoes, respond internally. You arrived late. Return to the anchor detail, reassume the tone, continue. Every minute you remain in the new state educates your body, and an educated body draws forth facts. Don't confuse peace with passivity. Peace is the energy of one who has concluded the matter within. Work, study, organize, move with precision, not to make it happen, but because that's how one who already is acts. When weariness comes, breathe, recall, and seal again. Mastery is not absence of tests, it is speed of return to the throne. And on the throne, one rule prevails above all: the invisible shapes the visible. Take with you the memory of what is eternal. Everything already is, and it is within. The decree you write in silence today will be the headline the world reads tomorrow. Assume, seal, remain. Don't implore, govern. When the king speaks, the kingdom moves. Speak within, with the single word that concludes the matter, and keep it in your heart. Done.